Student issues, they've been a growing concern on campuses around the nation. So how are students using their voice to take action? I'm Angela Reigard, and this is The Outlet. Now, students have faced problems for decades here at Ohio University. Some have majorly changed, but others haven't really changed at all. They've just evolved with the times. Last week, I took a walk with Dean of Students Jenny Hall-Jones to get her perspective on student issues. I'll walk and talk with you today to talk about students' issues. I mean, you know this campus very well, but you know students even better. You really do. So as Dean of Students, what are some of the issues you think are most prominent on Ohio University's campus today?
What we've seen over the past couple of years is because of access, because of education, because of medication, folks are more able to go to college than they ever were before. And so people come to college with mental health issues that they're already struggling with, and this can be a tough time. And so we're there in the Dean of Students office to help those students and make sure that they're successful.
You know, we're here in College Green. When I think of students' issues, I think of the ways that students deal with those issues. And quite often, you know, you see these issues sorted out through protests.
I think there's always activism and there's always movements, and you're right, the College Green.
Yeah, it seems like central. Yes.
But they have changed. The activism hasn't changed, but the topics I think have changed over the years, from social justice movements to the women's movements to now affordability and access. I think people can now use social media as a way of saying, hey, I agree, hey, I disagree, and they're using those platforms as a part of activism, so not everybody shows up to the College Green.
Do you think, in general, that students' issues reflect maybe a larger issue going on in the nation at that time?
I do.
Okay.
Because I think in a lot of ways higher education is kind of the mecca for change and for pushing democracy.
I think about, you know, the LGBT community and the issues surrounding, you know, their community. So how do you see that on campus?
Ohio University has always been a great place for LGBT students, even 30 years ago. Even before we had partner benefits, you know, even before we had a center. This has always been a place where people feel welcome and supported, especially in that community. Were
there other issues that maybe you didn't necessarily struggle with that maybe back when you were in school were prominent?
It's what am I going to do? How am I going to make a living? You know, I have to make the most of my years. What if I don't know what I want to do yet? You know, my background and my philosophy is it's okay. College is about figuring it out.
Right.
But it also costs a lot of money to go to school here.
Just to figure it out, too.
So are you just going to play and figure it out? That pressure on students, I think, is different.
Do you think that students are more empowered today?
If students want to make a difference and they want to change things, they have power in a collective voice, and I think they've used it very wisely over the years and continue to use it. I think they've always had that role and that voice here.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you for walking with me. It was great to, you know, hear what you think about, you know, students on campus. You know them so well. Now, despite the fact protests have changed, they haven't gone away. As Dean Hall-Jones mentioned, students have always used their collective voice on Ohio University's campus. In fact, student protests date way back to the early 19th century, which former OU professor Betty Hollow has researched extensively. Just look at these past protests. In 1826, President Wilson returned an unsatisfactory paper to a student. This angered the 30 students enrolled in the university at the time. They caused such a riot that all the students involved were expelled, which was most of the student population. About a decade later, students began recklessly vandalizing university property by throwing furniture out windows and locking teachers out of their classrooms. It got to the point where President McGuffey expelled so many students that the entire university was forced to shut down for 3 years. In the 1870s, reckless behavior began yet again, which at this point was really no surprise. Students across campus stacked all of their furniture in front of emergency exits, resulting in even more expulsions. Well, students aren't exactly throwing furniture anymore, but there are still plenty of issues on campus. We have Emma Perrin with us now. Emma, tell me the specifics. What are the issues that students are facing on campus?
Well, Angela, a lot of students nowadays are facing really tough image issues. And that's just enhanced if students are members of the LGBT community.
Okay, let's take a look at what you found.
College. It's the time when young adults learn new ideas and information. But that learning isn't just confined to the classroom. It is also a time for students to learn about themselves.
A lot of students, this is the first time where they're free to explore and question their orientation and their sexuality as a whole. In their home communities, non-heterosexuality was not an option.
That freedom to explore often leads to someone making a decision to embrace their sexual orientation and/or gender identity. According to a Pew Research Center study, the average coming out age, when it comes to sexual orientation, is 20 years old. And as students express their identity, especially when it comes to gender, some transition in a noticeable and public way.
One thing is changing your outfit. One thing is, in a way, changing your body in some way if a person begins a hormone regimen or something like that. And so the challenge for them is that they are being outed even if they don't want to be out.
But for LGBT students, whose parents may not support their identities, the consequences of coming out can be devastating.
I've had conversations with students who said they're scared to come out to their parents because they fear that they're going to be cut off, and if they're cut off, they don't know how they're going to pay tuition, pay books, and they are dependent financially on their families.
For many transgender and gender variant students, there are added obstacles, such as problems with their legal name and what they prefer to be called, according to those that work with LGBT students. Ohio University does have a preferred name policy initiative that makes the preferred name available to instructors and campus offices. OU Queer Straight Alliance President Ryan Volrath says the initiative relieves the repetition of constantly having to tell people their preferred name.
And everybody deserves to be called the name that they prefer to be called by.
Volrath, who prefers gender-neutral pronouns like they and them instead of he and him, is also glad to see the incorporation of gender-neutral housing on campus, such as gender affirmation surgery or hormone replacement therapy. Volrath does believe that improvements can be made in healthcare options for students with different gender identities. They say gender-neutral housing solves the problem of students feeling uncomfortable with rooming alongside someone whose gender identity and expression is different.
They're not elective, they are part of transgender people's lives, and so that should be covered just as much as a diabetic's insulin or antidepressants for somebody who needs those as well.
And for those students tackling the complicated issues surrounding sexual orientation and gender identity, the OU LGBT Center offers a place for students to hang out, talk, and help each other through the difficulties. OU Junior Alexa Ray Kitko describes how the center provides a safe atmosphere for LGBT students to express their true selves and learn from one another.
People have had to deal with oppression in all sorts of different ways. When you come to the LGBT Center, all that goes out the door because everyone here just understands that everyone is going through their own type of battle.
Kitko, who also prefers gender-neutral pronouns, says LGBT students' time on campus can be different than most other students' experiences. They say they face exceptional difficulties in everyday tasks, such as using the restroom or being called by their correct name in a classroom setting.
In terms of gender, a lot of people want to be accepted and recognized as the way that they would see themselves.
There is still work to be done, but Center Director Delphine Bautista is pleased with the progress that the center has made throughout the past few years. Students report feeling more comfortable with expressing themselves on campus, and instances of blatant discrimination have decreased. And the center hopes to reach outside the walls of its office in Baker Center and begin making an impact in classrooms and the community.
People feel okay on campus. Well, do they feel okay in the community? And where we are geographically, there's not a lot for the LGBT community. Actually, there isn't anything for the LGBT community. We don't have any bars, there are no centers that cater specifically to us. Perhaps taking the okay out beyond the borders of the university and going into Athens and offering ourselves as a resource.
So centers like these are extremely important on college campuses because as the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force found, 20% of college students fear for their physical safety due to gender identity.
That's an incredible percentage, and you like to think that college, this is a time where people are most often tolerant of the LGBT community, but if anything, it should show that it's such an issue.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Emma. Now we have in our studio clinical health psychologist Dr. Erica Gray. Dr. Gray specializes in the treatment of obsessive compulsive panic and anxiety disorders. She has also interest in the LGBTQ issues. She's outreach and consultation coordinator for counseling and psychological services. Welcome, Dr. Gray.
Thank you.
Can you just tell me, for the LGBT community, do they face, would you say, more mental health issues than other college students?
Well, Angela, I think the issues are different. If you think about it, you already have so many stressors as a college student, and then you add in the stress of being in the LGBT community and having to navigate coming out to friends, family, maybe even yourself, and kind of exploring your identity, and it just amplifies what might already be a very stressful time.
Well, and you just said it's a very stressful time. Students are trying to balance, you know, their personal lives with their professional lives, whether it's work, school, relationships. How does that contribute to a person's mental health?
Well, you know, you're talking about the impact of stress on mental health, and I think the way that it impacts individuals is different depending on the individual. I think the most important part of that is the coping mechanisms that people choose to use in managing their stress. And so there's a variety of skills that people can use. They can talk to friends, they can listen to music, they can exercise, they can go out to Court Street and drink. It just depends on how people decide to manage their stress. That determines the impact.
What are some common anxiety disorders among college students?
We see a lot of test anxiety, a lot of social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. We see it all across the spectrum, really. We do see some OCD and some perfectionism in some of our students. I think any anxiety disorder that you would see in the general population, we see here at OU.
And what would you suggest to a student who might be struggling with these anxiety issues?
First of all, don't panic, and I don't mean that ironically. I mean, really, there is help. The counseling center has a full staff of clinicians that are trained to treat anxiety disorders, and the treatments are very, very effective. So that is one resource a student could use, is coming to the counseling center.
I would imagine it would be very hard to tell, you know, is this normal anxiety of a college student, or is this a serious issue? How can students even tell?
Well, again, I think you said something really important there, that there is normal anxiety.
Right.
And all of us have it, and thank goodness we do. It's kind of our early warning system, if you will. But a student, when they start to feel that they're becoming overwhelmed and perhaps they're missing classes due to anxiety, or blocking mentally when they're trying to do their assignments, when it starts impacting their life functioning, that's when they know that it's time to talk to somebody.
And how would you say, what would be a clear sign that this is really impacting my life and how I'm going through my day-to-day?
I think once you start to avoid things that you would normally do, class attendance, spending time with friends is a big indicator. When you find that you'd really like to be out on the weekend, but you're hiding in your room because you're very anxious about it, then you don't have to live with that. You can come in and we can chat about it, and you can get on with your life.
We have a 24/7 connectedness now, especially as young people. You know, we're constantly tweeting, texting. How does this contribute to overall mental health?
Well, you know, I think that I'm very cautious about demonizing new technology because I love technology.
I do as well.
And I think that it's a blessing and a curse. I think that it does help people be more connected, but that's part of the problem. It helps people be over-connected sometimes, and people don't remember to unplug and actually check in with themselves once in a while.
Yeah, and I think what you said is important, is that sometimes, you know, as it does make our life easier, it could add extra anxieties. And also, you know, if you see someone constantly texting, tweeting, always having that connectedness, and maybe you don't, I'm sure that could also have an impact on you as well.
Oh, absolutely. It tends to alienate people. I talk to people all the time who say, you know, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my partner, they don't talk to me anymore. Their head is in their technology. So it's important to look up once in a while.
Definitely. Well, Dr. Gray, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, OU visiting professor Andy Alexander was editor of the Post during the infamous 1970s student protests. Alexander recalls numerous issues that eventually caused the school to shut down. Male students could be drafted once they left the university, resulting in one of the many protests on College Green. Also during this time, the civil rights movement was a large issue on campus, eventually resulting in the creation of a Black Studies program. Women also fought for their freedom as they had mandatory curfews, and now the beloved Marching 110 was strictly the 110 Marching Men of Ohio. In the early 1970s, Cutler Hall was occupied by students protesting rising tuition costs, which consequently still is a major issue on campus today. And I got to tell you, Caitlin, I have many students right now, or many friends, excuse me, and they're experiencing the weight of rising tuition costs right now, especially with graduation right around the corner. It's time to face those student loans. So can you tell me what students are feeling now?
Well, Angela, students are definitely feeling the stress as these tuition costs continue to rise, but the average actual number is higher than people think.
Wow.
Really stressful coming to school and knowing that when you graduate, you're going to have all of this debt.
$29,400 in debt to be exact. That's the average amount that CNN Money reports 7 in 10 college seniors will graduate with. The American Student Assistance website says that with nearly 20 million students attending college each year, close to 12 million turn to loans and other types of financial aid. Director of the Office of Student Financial Aid and Scholarships, Valerie Miller, says these forms can be vital.
For most students, filing the FAFSA is the opening gate into applying for all types of financial aid, and then following along with that would be institutional scholarship applications and other individualized types of forms and applications.
The Congressional Budget Office projects that the federal government made about a $50 billion profit on loans paid by students for college education in 2013. The U.S. Department of Education would disagree with that assessment. Secretary of Education Arne Duncan said during a phone conference, "It's actually neither fair nor accurate to characterize the student loan program as making a profit. This is $5 billion more than ExxonMobil, which is the most profitable company in the country." FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, determines grants, Pell Grants, and scholarships students could potentially receive. Multiple things are taken into consideration when determining the amount students will receive from the FAFSA.
When you add in all types of different things about that student, like academic programs, level of academics in achievement, the results can be certainly varied per student.
And especially myself being in a major such as journalism, I know that the money's definitely not going to be there, especially right when I graduate, because those entry-level jobs aren't going to pay enough for me to be able to pay back my student loan.
Andy Fodor, the Associate Professor of Finance and Chair of the Finance Department, advises researching potential degrees to see if the educational costs are worth the investment. While pursuing a college degree, students are hopeful their future earnings will be enough to comfortably pay back debt.
There are some degrees that are worth getting, and you can take on the debt and comfortably pay it back because getting that degree increases your expected earnings in the future.
Students hope these earnings will help them achieve the American dream. Jeremy Brown, a mechanical engineering major, fears the reality of debt after college.
To come out of college with a degree and not necessarily a job with debt that you have to start paying after a few months, how is that an American dream? That's a nightmare.
The average debt load of $29,400 is no dream for a broke college student. With that same amount of money, students could purchase a variety of daily luxuries. With $29,400, a student could purchase 4,503 12-packs of Natural Light beer, 7,840 tall Starbucks Frappuccinos, 24 MacBook Pros, and 4,523 Chipotle chicken burritos. Student debt in America now exceeds $1 trillion according to the Forbes website. According to HuffPost College, Ohio is among the top 10 states with the highest student debt load. While debt is piling up, students are doing their best to stay on top.
Hopefully, I'll be able to make enough money to squeeze by, and I'll keep waiting tables, I'm sure, for the next probably 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer than that.
40 million Americans hold student debt. This is greater than the entire population of Canada, Poland, North Korea, Australia, and more than 200 other countries. Also, it's 4 times greater than the population of Sweden. Students often try to offset their student debt by getting on-campus jobs. And joining us now is Taylor Petrus. Taylor, what kind of jobs do students have on campus?
Well, Angela, here at Ohio University, over 1,600 students are employed by culinary services and nearly 900 are employed by campus rec. However, some of those students are going to have to make some tough decisions about jobs for the upcoming semester.
College students are busy enough attending classes and finding time to study. Add not only 1, but 2 campus jobs onto that load, and the schedule can become overwhelming. Junior sports administration major Andrew Black quickly adjusted to his busy schedule, working as a resident assistant in Shively Hall and also at the Ping Recreation Center.
My first semester as an RA with another job, it was a club soccer season as well, and I had a couple of hard classes. It was definitely hard, but I believe that it was one semester, it was all it took to get used to it, and then I was fine from there on. Yeah.
Black's schedule, however, is subject to change despite his willingness to work 2 campus jobs. The Human Resources Department has taken action to specify an RA's work week hours due to recent changes in the laws about providing health care to university employees.
Under the Affordable Care Act, we have to track the hours that all employees work, including RAs, and they're right now not paid an hourly rate. Their payment includes their room and a stipend, so we have to know exactly how many hours they're working. So we ask them to clarify exactly how many hours is an RA expected to work.
After researching the average work hours for an RA, the department concluded that a 20-hour work week was appropriate for the job. Executive Director of Residential Housing, Peter Trentacoste, said he feels confident about that number.
I feel like it's a job that requires a lot. It's a lot of dedication. RAs receive a great compensation package. I would be challenged to find a better one on campus right now when you consider the cost of room and the stipend that we get.
Trentacoste said he is not opposed to RAs having other campus jobs and that it has never been an issue in the past.
You know, from my perspective, if folks were able to work more than that, we would certainly be open to that too. But it also happens to coincide with the maximum that campus allows students currently to work on campus.
Sophomore Corinne Marshall has been an RA for the past year while working a second job through Culinary Services. She plans to find an off-campus job in order to keep her RA position.
Honestly, from my perspective, I don't think that a student should be told how much they can work. If they think that they're able to put more on their plate, then I think that that's their responsibility as a student to balance work, job, and RA.
According to the Affordable Care Act, any employee that works over 30 hours weekly is required to be offered health care by the university. To avoid this, the university decided to cut back their summer hours from 40 hours a week to 28. Offering health care to its employees would cost the university an additional $15,000 a year.
Fialco said that many student workers would be close to qualifying for those benefits.
Someone who would work 40 hours in the summers and during the breaks, and then 20 during the spring and fall semesters, gets very, very close to 30 hours. They won't go over it, but gets close enough where the university said we need to be more cautious and reduce the summer hour limit down to 28 hours.
On average, junior Wynn Mayberry works 20 hours a week as a tour guide for undergraduate admissions. During the summer, her plan was to continue giving tours while working at the reception desk in Chubb Hall. But because she is enrolled in one class during the summer semester, she will have to choose which job to devote her time to.
I mean, the first session, there's going to be 2 months where I'm literally just doing nothing except for working at the Chubb desk. So it just kind of, it's just kind of a bummer because I'm used to working 60-hour weeks when I'm home, and now I'm going to be doing a third of that here.
Although many student workers understand the concept behind the work week limit, many feel that they are capable of handling more hours throughout the week.
It's hard for them to go from being able to work another job to not being able to, but I definitely think the move towards a number of hours is a good move, and it's a fair move.
This is a hot topic on campus today. It's going to be really interesting to see what these students choose because it's a really tough decision.
It's definitely a statewide issue, Angela. And however, looking at other universities like OSU and Miami, they allow their student workers to work up to 28 hours per week and even more during the summer.
Thank you, Taylor. That's all for The Outlet. Make sure to check us out next fall. You can watch the show anytime at WOUB.org. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter at WOUB_outlet. Thanks for watching.